Hi, I'm Ali.
Hey, I'm Mario, and this is the East and West Atlantic Real Estate Podcast.
Hi, Mario.
Hey, Ali, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Kalinde von Lohrmann, who's a lawyer based out of Portugal, specialized in real estate law, and more specifically also immigration law. So Kalinda, welcome on board, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Mario and Ali. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's such an interesting combination of what you propose in East and West. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today. So I'm a lawyer based in Portugal. I work with real estate law here, property law, how we say, and immigration. So in this past 3-4 years, what we've been noticing here, that a huge demand of foreigner clients choosing Portugal for very specific reasons that we're going to discuss today.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Kalinda. Maybe a little info on what happened in the past few years when it comes to Americans purchasing real estate. Last year, it was recorded about 15% of transactions here in Portugal, real estate transactions, were American buyers, and the trend seems to keep going up. Primarily for two reasons. Americans have been buying and can keep buying here in Portugal. One is relocation, and two is for investment purposes. And then investment purposes could also imply that they buy a second home in which they spend some time. But what we're very interested to hear about today is, Kalinda, if you could take us a bit through the legal aspects of the buying process, and in particular that first phase, what to watch out for and what, Americans should be knowledgeable about?
Of course. So I would say that the main reasons to buy here, it's a combination of aspects. Besides the legal aspect itself, it's the combination of affordability when you compare with the US market, the quality of life, the real estate stability. At the end of the day, people that decide to buy, to invest in a second home here, for example, chose to relocate only like 5 years later, saw a different market. Like some people got like more than 30% in terms of investment of return. And besides that, when people choose to not relocate immediately after they buy, they decide to put the property on the market and to have like a passive income with rent.
Right, interesting. And just linking into what you said about people that relocate, there is a retirement index that shows that Portugal is amongst the top countries in the world for the many reasons Ali and I already spoke about when we were doing the feature on Portugal. So it's not for nothing that people are interested in relocating to Portugal. And we won't go into all the details because we already elaborated on it quite extensively. But I'm sure that your experience confirms the same, right?
100%. At the end of the day, Portugal offers like a good healthcare system. When you compare with the US one, here's much more affordable, in different words. The food, the safety. Myself, I've relocated many US families that chose here specifically because they think here the kids will have a stable environment. Portugal, it's on one of the top positions of the Global Peace Index, that it was created, by the way, by an Australian, Ali.
Yay!
Exactly. And luckily, we are on the top. So when, especially families and retired people as well, they choose a country, of course, you check the taxation system, like the taxation implications. You check the real estate market, but also what are you looking at the end of the day? What is really important? And again, like safety and a stable environment usually plays a big role in that.
Absolutely. That's so important. I'm a mum, and that is music to my ears. I understand that. That's really great.
Now, let's talk a little bit about what really the implications are when you talk about the buying process. I mean, what are the more bureaucratic, administrative, legal, the more boring aspects we have to look into?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's boring because it's part of life, right? Every time that you choose to invest in a different country, You need to have, I would say, some hands helping on the process. How can we structure the real estate process in Portugal specifically? We divide in 3 steps. The first one, usually people sign a reservation agreement. What is that? In order to remove a listing from the market, you found your dream house, but then you're going to have several offers for the same property, as you know, on your daily basis, right? Once you sign the reservation agreement and the property is removed, you have the second step that in English, and usually we call PSPA, purchase and sale agreement. Here in Portugal, we call CPCV. So once you sign the second step, this contract, usually you put an initial down payment that it can go between 10 and 20%. It's always part of the negotiation process, carried on by the lawyer of the seller and the buyer. And the last and most important is the deed. It's where are you going to have the transfer of the ownership of the property from the seller to the buyer.
Yeah, that's awesome. When folks are considering real estate in Portugal, Kalinde, what are some of the considerations they need to have around the cost of acquiring property?
So I will add, besides the cost itself, what they should have in place. First, what I always recommend, Ellie, is to find a good real estate agent. Why? More than a contract, when you think from investment perspective or even to relocate, you want to be in a place that will grow in the future. Make sense?
Yes.
So if you were relocated only in 5 years, if you decide to buy a property that will in the next 5 years will have an increase of 10%, if you don't have someone that is knowledgeable in the area, you might not do a good investment at the end of the day. Or you bring in your family, you're bringing your parents that are old. You want to live in a part of the city that doesn't have a lot of hills, like Lisbon, okay? So you have many considerations. I would say this would be the first one. The second one, of course, we always recommend that you have legal assistance, because you will have implications related to the cost of this process. That will be taxes. Usually here, there are 2 main taxes with the process. That is IMT, that is calculated based on the property purchase price, that it can go up to 8%, and the stamp duty. Yeah, it can be a little bit high. That the stamp duty itself, it is 0.8%. Besides that, you have the notary's fees and the lawyer's fees. This will always change. Some lawyers, they charge 0.5% of the final deal. Some people charge 3,000 euros, 5,000 euros. It depends what you're looking for. Also, when you buy property, what you can consider is how are you going to buy the property? If you're going to use a specific tax structure, if you already have a trust in US, that is very common. How this trust will be recognized in Portugal. Trust will be recognized, the trust will not. So I would say that you prepare yourself first once you find the property and how you want to structure this purchase.
That's really good advice, because I know a lot of American families that I'm working with here, they do purchase some of the properties under a trust. And they, use that vehicle for the acquisition of property. So that's really great advice. When I'm working with clients here in the US, I typically tell my clients to allow 2 to 3% of the total purchase price for costs associated with closing. And so they may be costs associated with insurance, taxes, property tax costs, or, other costs associated with acquiring the property. So it sounds fairly similar when you're working in Portugal.
Very, very interesting. And to that point as well, could you elaborate a little bit on the mortgage situation based on your experience, Kalinda? Because I imagine there are Americans, you've had American clients, at least, I've dealt with American clients, obviously, that applied for mortgages here in Portugal. Could you elaborate a little bit on that as well?
Sure, of course. So I receive a lot of clients. I receive this question all the time. I'm a non-resident. Can I apply for a mortgage in Portugal? The answer is yes, you can. What you have to get together is the documentation related to the type of income that you have in US in order to contact a financial institution to do your like risk assessment, your financial assessment in order to get this mortgage. Like the rate itself, it always changes. Nowadays is up to 3%. But then what do you need to consider for how long you will get this mortgage? What is the amount that you're looking for? At the end of the day, in this past years, many people chose because you can diversify your property options. You have low interest rates and the potential appreciation here of the assets. Besides the tax benefits, depending on how you structure this purchase.
Great. Thank you for that, Kalinda. And Ellie, one of the things that we've been touching upon previously is obviously there's different types of customers, and you deal a lot with international customers, and obviously in particular Americans interested to purchase. And a question that comes up all the time as well is, what type of visas can I apply for when relocating, or when I'm intending to relocate to Europe? There's quite a big range of them, but if you could touch upon the essential ones that people qualify for. And foremost, I think we've noticed youngsters, for instance, relocating to Europe as well, which are called the digital nomads because, of the hybrid working model that allows them to work remote. And there's a specific type of visa for these kind of people as well. So it'd be interesting for you to lay that out to us. And Ellie, obviously feel free to interrupt and ask Kalinda additional questions because I'm sure you get them from your clients all the time. So Kalinda, could you give us sort of a little synopsis on those type of visas?
For sure. Let me shed some light. So Mario, what I say is usually the relocation process starts with the residency and the visa requirements. If you are a foreigner and you do not have like a second like nationality, like your parent, like your dad is not Italian, so you never applied or never had the chance to apply for like a EU citizenship, you need to start first choosing your visa. The main ones nowadays and very popular, it's the D7 visa based on passive income and the digital nomad visa that we call D8 visa. So for people that have what we call passive income, that can be like pensions, that is very common also in the US. You have a big portfolio investment that you chose your whole life. If you have a specific amount that corresponds to the minimum wage, 820 euros, you can apply for a D7 visa. For the young folks, people that can work remotely, there's no issues related to their employers. They can apply for this different visa that we call digital nomad, but the amount is slightly different. For the second option, you need to prove that you earn minimum 3,280 euros per month.
That's interesting. Something that I think would be interesting to a lot of my clients anyway is when people are making a decision like this to move to an alternative country or maybe own property in an alternative country to their main residence. I think having a great real estate agent is also important to understand if you do have a family, what are the best schools? And so my kind of two-part question is, do people rely on their real estate agents to help them with that? And the second part of the question is, are there more schools popping up now that there are more Americans moving to Portugal?
Ali, what I say is our business, it's based on people. Right? At the end of the day, we create relationships. Like your business will have the values that you have at the end of the day. So depending how you see your client, you're going to have a long-term relationship. So if you have someone that you can trust, it's the first step to build a safe bridge. That's what I say, that a real estate agent, like a lawyer, will help to build the bridge until you land in a different country. Mm-hmm. So every time that you move in, everything's new. The adaptation process, until you build your own support system. So if you can have someone kind of showing you the best way, it's awesome. Because at the end of the day, it's not only about the contracts that we sign, right? It's about the relationships that we create on the process and what we are really willing to provide.
Absolutely. So you see, Ali, even lawyers have emotions apparently, right?
We do.
We're joking here, right? I mean, no offense to anybody or any profession, obviously. And I think actually to your question related to international schools, Ali, it's interesting you mentioned that because I was just up north with a developer who was saying, because of the agency and its huge footprint in the United States and, the interaction between us agents, across the pond, basically, which is one of the reasons why this podcast started. This developer specifically was asking me, would you think it would be a good idea to even build an international schools on the grounds of where they have the development?
Wow.
And the reason he was asking that is because he heard through the grapevine, and also obviously documented himself, that there are more and more Americans coming over, and there's a lot of demand for international schools. And that applies to Lisbon, it applies to the north, it applies to the Algarve. And there has been a substantial increase in international schools over the last 3-4 years with different types of programs, English obviously spoken. They're either American or English schools, but English spoken. And I think we'll see more and more because there is demand. There's demand that justifies, new schools, new management, new types of schools coming up in Portugal for sure.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's amazing.
I think there might be a lot more that we could ask Kalinda, but we'll obviously, we only have so much time on every podcast, but I think that if Kalinda, would allow us to, we would love to invite her again, right, Ali? To
Absolutely. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalinda, especially because I think, things like taxation, subjects like taxation in particular, could be very interesting podcast subject, in the near future, so to say. So again, Kalinda, thank you so much for having been and having accepted to be on our podcast. Ali, thanks as well.
Thank you.
It's not the start, but sort of midday for you, I guess. So,
yes.
Right. You still have a lot of working hours ahead. We're almost there. A couple of more hours, and our day is done. Right, Kalinda?
Thank you so much, Mario and Ellie, for having me. It was a pleasure, and I see you soon. Okay.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome, and thank you again to all our listeners, our viewers, and we hope you truly enjoyed this episode of the East and West Atlantic Real Estate Podcast. So thanks to all of you, and bye, Ali. Bye, Kalinda.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
you guys. Bye.
Bye.